We will be previewing all things fantasy golf for this week's American Express. This will be a new podcast that we are debuting this week. We will be doing a live stream every Tuesday, talking about the best DFS plays, best bets, one and done. I will be joined every week by my fellow RotoWire golf expert, Len Hochberg, and we may have new guests in the future. So, Len, how you doing? Are you excited for this week?
I am, Ryan. Great to be with you and great to be with you, everybody. Yeah, it's just nice to get back into things. Last week, opening day, and before we know it, it's just going to be the middle of the season. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure. This week, obviously, a lot of the big storylines are going to be about Scottie Scheffler, coming off another just fantastic year. It just seems like every single year he's winning, a ton of events. These last 4 or 5 years have been incredible. What do you sort of expect from him this week? Kind of a quirky little event, with 3 courses. But obviously Scottie is the very heavy favorite this week.
Yeah, anytime he plays, he has to be on your radar. Interestingly, I just looked this up before we came on the air. Scottie Scheffler has never won his first tournament of the year. He's come close. He was third here at the Amex back in 2019, was his season opener. He's had some top 10s at the Century, but he's the favorite. But this type of tournament, we've seen long shots win a lot, and we see the scores 25, 29, 27 under the last 3 years. On a very easy course, this lets a lot of the lesser golfers into play. If they just get hot with the putter, they can start rolling in birdies. I think that's why we've seen so many long shots here through the years. The field is better this year, though. And Scottie Scheffler tends to separate himself from the best golfers on the toughest courses. Last year, 6 wins, 2 majors, 2 signature events. He won only 1 birdie fest, 31 under at one of the Texas tournaments, Byron Nelson, I think. So that's really where he separates himself. This is where he could get, have a great week, but just someone outputt him. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, Scottie's on a heck of a run. He's got a lot of big streaks at stake this week, I guess. He hasn't finished outside the top 8 in any event since the Players last year, which is just hard to fathom. He hasn't missed the cut since the end of 2022. So, you sort of mentioned it. He makes, a lot of the separation with his ball striking this week. These courses they're all pretty easy, right? There's not a lot of danger to worry about. I think basically just the stadium course has got some teeth, but the other 2 for sure you can get. If it comes down to just him not having a great putting week, he might just finish T17 or something, which is, I believe, what he finished the last time he played this event, and he didn't have a very good putting week. So, but yeah, at the same time, you mentioned the CJ Cup. That's kind of a similar style to what we'd see this week, and he won by 8. So you never know. Obviously, it's hard to bet against Scottie, but there's lots of other good options in this field, right? There's 5 players in the top 10 in the world. A lot of good stars that are looking to get the season off to a hot start. I think we could probably start jumping into to DFS range here. Len, obviously you do the DraftKings articles for us every week at RotoWire. I do the FanDuel ones. Looking right at the thing that stands out is Scottie's 3,800 more than the next guy here, and there's only a couple guys in the 10K range. So how do you sort of sort at the top of that from a DFS perspective?
Yeah, it's hard. And I always include Scottie Scheffler in my article. I think it's just a default pick. You just can't ever not have him in there. He won only 6 times. What did he have? 20 starts, something roughly, give or take a few. So he's not winning every week. But I think you do have to have him on your radar. And certainly not just picking a winner, but in DFS, it's a different animal, and you could have him in your lineup. But yes, as you mentioned, there's an incredible expense, 14,200. The other guy I like in above the 10,000s is Ben Griffin. He's already played twice in 2 starts this year. I kind of thought, now that he just got married last month, that he wouldn't play as much. He played 30 times last year. He made made Sung J M look like a slacker with 30 starts. But I actually peeked ahead to next week. I don't think he's playing him in the Farmers next week, so he's taking a break. Maybe he won't play 30 times. But he played pretty well last week. He had roughly a 20th place finish, something not as good as his ranking would have called for, but I do like him at a much more favorable price than Scotty Scheffler, low 10,000s. And he's had some good years here. He's finished 9th here last year and 7th the year before. So he's my other play, sort of staying away from Cantlay, waiting to see what he's going to do this year after a down year. And Ludwig Oberg also coming off a down year. Let's see what he's going to do.
Yeah, for sure. When I think about Ben Griffin, it's like he doesn't realize yet that he's a top 10 player in the world. You know, he's used to just going out there and have to grind and play every week. But it's like, you know, this guy that won 3 times last year, which, you know, I think we all sort of saw some potential there. I don't know if we saw it 3 times and getting to this point, but yeah, you know, he's always going to be a threat if he's in the field like he is this week. You know, just shifting sort of down a little bit further, looking at some other options. I think one guy that stood out to me when I was going through was Alex Noren. You know, this is a guy who's 43 years old and honestly playing some of the best golf of his career. He is 17th on the data golf rankings. He's 13th in the world. He's got 5 top 10s in his last 10 starts, including a pair of victories, one of which was the BMW PGA Championship, the sort of flagship event on the DP World Tour. And he's been excelling both on approach and with the putter. So those are 2 things I'm looking for this week. I think if you got to hit a lot of greens, you got to hit it close, and you got to make a lot of putts. You know, the winning score we're projecting to be pretty low. So you know, Noren is definitely one that stands out. If you want to go a little bit further down, upper 7,000 range, Pearson Coody was a guy that I highlighted. He had an interesting year last year. You know, he had, I believe, conditional status on the PGA Tour, so he made a handful of events, but he also played a lot on the Korn Ferry Tour and got his card back through the Korn Ferry Tour just because he played so well in his limited starts over there for this season. But you know, this is a guy I always thought, you know, even coming out of from Texas, had a lot of potential, and he's really, really long, and he's exceptional with the putter as well. So I think both those things will play here. It plays a lot of weeks, honestly. He's coming off a T13 at the Sony Open. So obviously feeling good about himself. And I think there's a lot of long-term upside here with Pearson Coody. So, you know, if we want to go a little bit further down, Len, you know, maybe a guy lower 7K range, even 6K range, any sort of value options that we can create here from a DFS perspective.
Well, I do like the pick of Coody, and I do have him in my article as well. You know, he did not have a good putting year on the PGA Tour last year, but I think that was an aberration. He's been a very good putter in the past, and just not to get too sidetracked here, but he was also 7th in his limited starts on the PGA Tour, 7th in first-round scoring average. So you're looking for a guy who could, you know, if you're going to play first-round leader, also getting further tangentially, if you're going to play a first-round leader, look for someone playing on the Nicklaus course or the La Quinta course, and stay away from the Stadium course. I mean, it's always that possibility that somebody gets hot, but that's going to be a much harder path to first-round leaders. So I do like Coody. And Noren's really interesting because he's 13th in the world, and you said, but he doesn't have his PGA Tour card because he was hurt for most of the season and didn't finish in the top 100. So he's in a very quirky place himself, but he's going to be in all the majors. But I don't know the whole status for him of getting into PGA Tour events, but I do like that play this week. Also in the 7,000, same price as Pearson Coody. Akshay Bhatia. Of all the, when I go down the board, I'm sure you do the same. You look at everybody and you wonder what stands out to you, what catches your eye. Well, that really caught my eye. That I thought this guy didn't have the best year last year, but we know his capabilities. I thought that stood out to me as really a low price. There are some players above him that I think he's just better than. And, he is not a long hitter. I look at a lot of guys who are short hitters, and a lot of courses, these beastly courses, they have a lot of trouble on just because they're 30, 40, 50 yards back in the fairway from some other guys. Well, on shorter tracks, these shorter guys can compete better. And Akshay Bhatia is a shorter hitter, averaging under 300 off the tee. So I like that. But otherwise, he is very good. 35th in putting last year, 14th in strokes gained approach. There aren't too many guys in the top 35 in both those categories on tour last year. So I think he's got a very well-rounded game. And 14th in birdie average last year. So I do like him a lot this week to contend. And the other guy in the 7,000s I'm looking at down at 7,300 is Matt Wallace. Now, Matt Wallace can go so many different ways. He could flame out. He could miss the cut. But when he plays well, he has a lot of good weeks. He can play, he can get it done. And so there's a little more risk involved this week where I think we can take, because we don't have to endure a cut at 36 holes. We endured at 54 holes. So it's a week that I might take a little bit more risk. And certainly if you're playing cash games in DFS, you can withstand a miscut after 54 holes a lot better than you could after only 36 holes. So I think Matt Wallace gives you a little bit of an opportunity for some upside with risk.
Yeah, that's a very good point. With the 54 hole cut, obviously, you're going to be getting, a full round, basically, all the pars, the birdies from a round 3, which you might not get for a guy. So, it's always fascinating that I was just kind of looking through the 6K range, and it's so funny to me, you look at, imagine doing this a year ago and seeing Tony Finau and Tom Kim in the 6K range. Like, I don't think anybody would have ever thought that a year ago. And, here we are. So I don't recommend either of them this week, but just kind of funny that they're all the way down there. A couple other guys that sort of stood out, Lee Hodges had a great week last week. Another guy that's he's a really good iron player, should have a lot of good birdie opportunities. And even like Davis Riley, had a great week at the Sony Open, had just basically a rough 3-4 hole stretch on Sunday. Kind of looked like he was going to run away with it after the first couple of holes. Right. Started, 2 birdies in his first 4 holes, I believe. And, all of a sudden he was just out of the picture. It was hello, Chris Gotterup. So, definitely options here. And, as you mentioned sort of off the top, we see a lot of long shots do very well this week because, these are very easy courses, and, it's hard to separate with anything except the putter, really. So, they're like the optimal lineup this week. You're going to see a lot of guys that are way down this low. So, I think if we want to just sort of transition over to the betting board, if we look at it on DraftKings, as I'm pulling it up right now, you got Scotty Scheffler, obviously the heavy favorite at plus 280. You got Ben Griffin at plus 2,000, Sam Burns plus 2,500. I imagine you probably wouldn't want to play Scotty Scheffler this week, just considering the odds and sort of, as we talked about, being hard to separate for a player that good. But any guys up towards the top that their value kind of catches your eye?
Yeah, there is, and we talked about Ben Griffin a little bit ago. But in terms of the betting market, I also have Sam Burns in my DraftKings article, and I do like Sam Burns in a lot of ways this week. Talk about it being a putting contest. There was no better putter on the PGA Tour last year than Sam Burns, #1 in strokes gained putting, top 20 in birdie average. He had some trouble from the fairway, which is not good, which is an issue. But his putting has been able to overcome that. He's had some good weeks at the Amex. He's finished twice. He's finished 6th here, most recently 2 years ago. So this, I think a lot of things line up very nicely for him this week. Hopefully, presumably, he's tried to work on his fairway accuracy, his iron play in the offseason, because that would really be able to push him to another level. He's still obviously a terrific player, but he is, last time I checked at DraftKings, 25-1. And so I think if I had to make one outright pick, it would be Sam Burns at 25-1 plus 2,500.
Yeah, Sam Burns was one I wrote down as well. I just think he's a great fit here. Obviously, you mentioned he's got great history, especially compared to, I think, a lot of the other names towards the top. And another one that I liked that was a little bit further down was Harry Hall. He's coming in at 45-1 here. I think him and Sam Burns, I think when you look at it, they're kind of like the two best putters on the tour right now. I feel like both of them, it's just you get them on the green pretty much anywhere, and the hole's got to watch out. He ranked third last year in birdie average, so I sort of felt like this was a great week for him because obviously there's going to be tons of birdies, tons of eagles out there. And I like the fact too that he put himself in contention last week. He was in the final group at the Sony Open. Final round didn't really go exactly how he was hoping, but he put himself there, and he's going to be motivated this week, I think, to have a solid week. Any sort of placement bets, any sort of top fives, top tens you're looking out here, Len?
Well, I am looking at top 20, and maybe this guy could also double as a top 10. But Michael Thorbjornsen, we've been waiting for him. He was the number one player in college a few years back. He's sort of entrenched on the PGA Tour now. He's certainly ahead of the Luke Clantons and Gordon Sargents, and he's a year ahead of them, a year or two ahead of them. But he's certainly more advanced in his career, than they are. He is a terrific driver of the golf ball. It's not really imperative that you are a long hitter, but he is one of the longest, most accurate hitters. He's a top 10 in distance, top 50 in accuracy. That doesn't happen a lot. Usually the guys who hit it very far spray it all over the place. And but he is really good at keeping it in the fairway. It's a wonderful combination. He also was number one on tour last year in greens in regulation. It's what you were talking about earlier. Get the ball on the green and then make some putts. Well, the putting thing is a problem for him. He has not been a very good putter. I'm sure hopefully he spent his entire offseason working with some putting guru and trying to figure out things, because that's really separating him from winning on tour and jumping to the next level in his career. As it is, he's pretty good, 8,600 on DraftKings, 45-1. So I do like him as a top 20. We see a lot of times these guys who are great with all their clubs but the putter can get into the top 25, but without the putter, it's really hard to get into contention and finish in the top 10. And they get a lot of top 25s, but he's had a few top 10s regardless. And so definitely a top 20 for Thorbjornsen, and I'm sort of toying in my head that he might even be able to crack the top 10 this week as well.
Yeah, Thorbjornsen's a guy that I am extremely high on going in this year. I just think, like you said, he's one of the best drivers on tour for sure. I think we saw another one of the best drivers, Chris Goddard, last week, and he's already got another one on the board. I'd be shocked, honestly, if Thorbjornsen doesn't pick up a win somewhere this year. I think his complete game is so good. And then, if he gets a hot week with the putter, look out. Kind of like a guy like JJ Spawn last year. JJ Spawn was kind of always a iffy putter, but his ball striking was great iron player, and, had the best putting week of his career to win at Oakmont, the US Open. So, Thorbjornsen is definitely a guy I'm going to be looking at a lot this year. I was looking at top fives. I was going to take Jacob Bridgman at 15-1. He's coming off, I believe he had a top five last week, the Sony Open. That was his fifth top five finish since the start of 2025. This is a guy that just, when everything's clicking for him, when the putter's working, he finishes really high. That's a big reason why he made it to the Tour Championship last week or last season, excuse me. Not really a guy that I think anybody would say, oh, this is a top 30, player in the world. But, you look at a lot of the high finishes that he has, and, you could see how he racks up all those points. And a few of them came in signature events as well, I believe. So I think that's a really good value on a course where you're going to have to get hot with the putter. I also had Matt Fitzpatrick plus 310 for a top 10. I was a little worried about Fitzpatrick just because he's never played this event before, and I think it is kind of quirky, and we haven't really mentioned it yet, but you are playing with amateurs for the first 3 rounds here, and tends to be a lot of long rounds if you're not kind of used to it. Sometimes there's that can throw guys off, but I feel like Fitzpatrick will be fine. I mean, honestly, he didn't start the season great last year, but the second half of 25 was just incredible. The iron play, the short game, the putting was all really, really, really good. Second half of 25, he closed the year with 9 top 10s and 16 starts, including winning the DP World Tour Championship. So I think he's in great form, and even without the course history, this should fit him pretty well. So I think is anything else that stands out on the betting board for you, Len?
Well, I do like Matt Fitzpatrick. He is in my article. You're right. He had a terrible first 3 months of the year, but he has not missed a cut since the Masters. 19 worldwide starts. You mentioned he won the DP World Tour Championship. All the big guys were there. The thing, he hasn't played since then. So that might be, a consideration. One of the things that we don't think of at the Amex, but because the Century was canceled this year, if I can explain this not too convolutedly, at the Sony, every year at the Sony, the winner would often be someone who played at the Century the week before. Now, there are better golfers at the Century, so there's that. But also the guys who played the Century had a week's head start and got presumably 4 rounds of golf in, and so a little bit of the rust was taken off. So now guys who played last week at the Sony this week, they might have an edge over some of the guys who this is their first start. So there is that, but it's not 100% everybody from the Sony is going to do better than everyone who didn't play the Sony. But I do like Matt Fitzpatrick. And Bridgman, while I don't have him in my article, I did make sure to get him in the RotoWire staff draft this year because he is in all the signature events. That's one of the things, we look for. You want to get guys who are playing signature events and playing majors. And he's probably Mr. Anonymous, Mr. Irrelevant of the 30 guys who were in the Tour Championship last year. But that's not easy to do, to finish in the top 30 on the PGA Tour. And there were so many big names who were not in there. And he was, and he came out of the gate last week with a top 5 right off the bat. So I do like him a lot this season as well.
Yeah, I think Jacob Bridgman was kind of the highlight of everybody's sort of doomsday scenarios for the Tour Championship, the FedEx Cup, when they sort of went away from the starting strokes format and just made it, if you're top 30, it's just heads up, 72 holes, and whoever wins it wins it. And Jacob Bridgman had just as good of a shot to win the FedEx Cup as Scotty Scheffler because he was in the field. But anyways, I think Bridgman's a good player, but hopefully he has a good week, and we can sort of transition over to one and done here. You mentioned the staff draft, and obviously we are in a one and done league together with a lot of our other RotoWire colleagues. I last week had JJ Spawn, burnt him, finished T40. Who did you have, Len?
I had Russell Henley, a little bit better, but unless you're winning in the one and done, you're right. Gonna, that's where the real money is. There's such a difference between first and second, and it doesn't even matter if you're not in the top 5. It's almost the same as a miscut. So yeah, right. Number 5 golfer in the world, Russell Henley, did not deliver for me.
Yeah. Yep. So I guess that brings us to this week. We just, I guess, sort of what's what's your strategy with one and done this week? Should we sort of lean away from, maybe one of those top players, just considering this format? Obviously, it's not a signature event, and just the fact that we've seen a ton of long shot winners here.
Yeah, my strategy on one and done is I'm not going to take a long shot, even though long shots win this tournament a lot. I mean, even last year, Sepp Straka was 50-1, but he's an accomplished player. And, in one and done, there, depending on your league, you're playing maybe 30, 32 tournaments all year. You don't have to go that deep. You want to use all the top players at some point during the season. I mean, yes, in a John Deere, you're going to have to dig a little deeper because there's nobody there or something like that. But I'm not going to stray too far. I was happy playing Russell Henley. I'm going to pick another top guy this week. Yeah, I'm not going to play Scotty Scheffler. I'm going to save him for a major or the players with the biggest purses. But I'm not going to go too far down the road either. And I'm going to pick Sam Burns. I'm going to pick Sam Burns at some point this season. I don't think I'm going to pick Sam Burns in a major. I don't think I'm going to pick Sam Burns in a signature event. I mean, maybe there'll be some things early this season that prove me wrong or prove that he's really taken the next level. But I just don't see him in that upper echelon of guys right now, the very, very upper echelon with McIlroy and now Fleetwood, and still put Xander there. So this is a place where I talked about Burns earlier, where a great putter, could get hot, has had a couple of top sixes in this tournament. So he's going to be my play this week. And you have to play somebody somewhat good in the top, 20, 25. You're not going to go, I can't imagine anyone going too far down the road.
Peter Malnati. No, we're not playing Peter Malnati this week.
Big fade on Peter Malnati. Big fade this week on Peter Malnati. You heard it here.
Yes. I actually did a article before that was included in our draft kit, where I went through every single tournament all year and I did my one and done pick for every single event. And this week I did Harry Hall, and I'm going to stick with that. I like Harry Hall. I think this is the perfect sort of format for him. I think this will be one of his better shots to win all season. I think he's a good but not great player that I don't have to worry about, saving for a signature event or something like that. Mm-hmm. I liked what I saw from him last week at the Sony Open, and hopefully he can come out here, make a cut, and get a high finish. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think Harry Hall is a guy that just, if you're playing 30 some odd guys, 30 tournaments, something, Harry Hall is a guy you're probably going to use at some point during the season. And you never want to burn some guy in the first couple of weeks, but you got to pick somebody in week one. You got to pick somebody in week two. You just got to go. It's, I like Hall this week to have a good week. Yeah.
Yeah. I always thought about that too, is, it gets kind of demoralizing if you don't have a good start to the season. Obviously you can make up a lot of ground with, winning a big purse or something, but it just feels like the people that always get off to a good starts in these one and done leagues are usually there all the way through. So, we got 5 events basically in the West Coast swing. So I think, you'd really like to be able to, obviously hit a winner in there, but if not, just get some guy that finished in the top 3 in one of these, and you should be in a pretty decent spot, I would think, going into the Florida swing and the rest of it. So
it's hard. 156 guys to pick one. This isn't tennis where you have Alcaraz or Sinner, and you're even Scotty Scheffler, like I said, he won 6 times out of not even 1 out of every 3 starts last year, and he's like historically great. It's really hard. If you get 3-4 winners all season in a one and done pool, you're probably going to be right in the mix at the end of the season.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So let's just get into some last minute predictions, I guess. Any score predictions here? Obviously, I think that's going to be kind of an interesting one. The winner's been at least 20 under here since 2012, since they moved it from people can't believe this event used to be 5 rounds. Like, this event used to be forever, and they just kept playing and playing and playing at all these different courses. But Now it is 72. It's been 72 since 2012, but the winning score has been at least 20 under since then. So what number are you looking at this week?
I always defer to Jeff Sherman over at golfodds.com. I always put him in my article, what the over-under is. And actually, I was a little bit surprised. He came in at 261.5, which is 26.5 under par, which is, it's more than last year, but we saw 29 and 27 the two previous years. The weather, last I checked, is going to be perfect. It's like temperature around 70, high temperatures around 70. So I guess it could be chilly in the mornings in the California desert, actually, but very light wind forecast right now. No rain or anything like that. I mean, it's just one big green light special this week. So I thought 26 under was a little bit light. So I don't like to defer from someone that, in Vegas who knows a lot more about these things than me. But I don't know. I'll say more than 26.5 under, if I can be vague, sort of like that. You?
Yeah, that's funny. That was the number. I actually wrote down 26. I felt good about that. That was one more than Straka had last year. Rahm, I think, had 27 a couple years ago, and then Nick Dunlap, the amateur that won it 2 years ago, 29 under. That was crazy. So I think we'll definitely see a ton of birdies. I think last year the cut was about 9 under, somewhere in there. So you're gonna have to really be making some putts if you're gonna make this cut. I mean, any other sort of bold predictions? I wrote down a couple here. I said I think Scotty's top 8 streak is going to end this week. I think he's not going to finish in the top 8. I think he'll finish in the top 25 somewhere, but I just think, first week of the season, might be a little off with the putter here and there. And then I said also I thought a 200-to-1 shot would be in the final group on Sunday.
Yeah, Scheffler's only had one top 10 here. He hasn't played here. He didn't play here last year. He did play here 2 years ago. His top 10 was in his rookie or in his debut at the Amex in 2019. He finished 3rd, but he hasn't had a top 10 since. He wanted to play last year, if we remember, but he had that Christmas dinner accident, and the tournament really took a hit last year because Scheffler originally was in the field. Then Xander Schauffele, who was number 2 in the world at the time, he was in the tournament. He pulled out on Monday, non-kitchen related, as far as I remember. And so the tournament actually is probably really thrilled to have such a good field this week. Scotty Scheffler's only finished in the top 8 in this tournament once. So you might be right. I don't know. I don't think I have anything nearly as bold or brazen as that.
I mean, it's hard to really say that's bold, just because, like, you think about it, like, just a good player didn't finish in the top 8 one week. Like, they finished T12. Like, oh well. But, like, I mean, it's Scotty, and he sort of defies. He's like Tiger. He kind of defies all the expectations and everything else. But I think it's funny this week. I felt like the last few years, this event has kind of really shifted up. We've had a lot of really good fields for the Amex for whatever reason, which is obviously good to see. It used to kind of be one that everybody kind of skipped and just waited for Torrey Pines or something like that to get their season started. So it's definitely good to see them all back here.
It might really get even a further boost. There's talk about consolidation on the PGA Tour. I think that's definitely going to happen. It's just a question of when. They're talking maybe as early as next year. And the 2 Hawaii tournaments may go away. The Century is still contracted with the PGA Tour through 2035, but the tournament doesn't have to be in Hawaii. They didn't always play the Tournament of Champions, as it was called, in Hawaii. And Sony's contract is up now. So that tournament could go away a little bit more easily. It would be terrible for the golf purists, golf to YLA. It's been there for 60 years, but it could put the, if the Amex sticks around, and Amex is a pretty good, big partner of the PGA Tour. Do envision whatever consolidation there is, that the Amex and this tournament is a part of it. So they may get a lot more favorable position and even more good fields down the road.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like that's something we could talk about for another whole live show. So, but yeah, no, there's lots of schedule changes we expect. I think everybody is just kind of in a wait and see how it's all going to work. But yeah, it definitely sounds like in the future there will be some adjustments there for sure. But I think on that note, I think we kind of hit everything. We talked some DFS, we talked some betting, we talked some one and done. Next week we will be back on Tuesday to preview the Farmers Insurance Open at Torrey Pines and the much anticipated debut or return, I should say, of Brooks Koepka on the PGA Tour. So that will be something definitely to look forward to. But for now, I'm Ryan Andrade. That is Lynn Hochberg. Check out our content at RotoWire. And we will see you guys all next week.